Forget what the world thinks of stepping out of your place.
Think your best thoughts.
Speak your best words.
Work your best works.
Looking to your own conscience.
For approval.
Susan B. Anthony. Susan Bronnell Anthony, more commonly known as Susan B. Anthony, is a recognized name for her actions with women's rights and women's suffrage. Learning about her in grade school teaches you an overview of her campaign through the upper years of her life, but teaches you little of her early life. Oh, hello there! Susan B. Anthony was born on February 15th in 1820 in Adams, Massachusetts. She was second of 7 children in her family. She was raised in a Quaker family, which strongly influenced her views of morality. Along with being the owner of a small local cotton mill, Susan B. Anthony's father was an abolitionist and a temperance advocate. He encouraged all of his children to be self-supporting by giving them responsibilities at an early age. Oh hey! When Susan B. Anthony was 6 years old, her family moved to Battenville, New York, where her father managed a large cotton mill. During this time, she attended boarding school in Plainfield, Connecticut, about 150 miles from Battenville. At age 17, she began studying at a Quaker boarding school outside of Philadelphia. Unfortunately, she was forced to enter studies only after 1 term. After the economic depression of 1937, her father had to declare bankruptcy, causing the Anthony family to lose their Battenville house in New York. So in 1845, the Anthony family moved to Rochester, New York. This is where Susan began learning of her vocational calling. A vocational calling is the call to service in life based on gifts, desires, and affirmations. For Susan, this gift was her ability to impact the lives of others through her speaking and her relationships. Her desire was to change the world for the betterment of underprivileged women.
In 1853, at the State Teachers Convention, Susan B. Anthony called for women to be admitted to professions and for better pay for women teachers. She also asked for women to have a voice at the convention and to assume committee positions. In 1859, Susan B. Anthony spoke before the State Teachers Convention at Troy, New York, and at the Massachusetts Teachers Convention, arguing for coeducation and claiming there was no differences between the minds of men and women. In the 1890s, Anthony served on the Board of Trustees at Rochester State Industrial School, campaigning for coeducation and equal treatment of boys and girls. In the 1890s, Anthony raised $50,000 in pledges to ensure the admittance of women to the University of Rochester. In a last-minute effort to meet the deadline, she put up the cash value of her life insurance policy. The university was forced to make good its promise, and women were admitted for the first time in 1900. Susan B. Anthony's paper, The Revolution, first published in 1868, advocated an 8-hour day and equal pay for equal work. It promoted a policy of purchasing American-made goods and encouraging immigration to rebuild the South and settle the entire country. Publishing The Revolution in New York brought her in contact with women in the printing trades. In 1868, Anthony encouraged working women from the printing and sewing trades in New York who were excluded from men's trade unions to form working women's associations. As a delegate to the National Labor Congress in 1868, Anthony persuaded the Committee on Female Labor to call for votes for women and equal pay for equal work, although men at the conference deleted the reference to the vote. In 1870, Anthony formed and was elected president of the Working Women's Central Association. The association drew up reports on working conditions and provided educational opportunities for working women. Anthony encouraged a cooperative workshop founded by the Sewing Machine Operators Union and boosted the newly formed Women's Typesetters Union in the Revolution. Anthony tried to establish trade schools for women printers. When printers in New York went on strike, she urged employers to hire women instead, believing this would show how they could do the job just as well as men. and therefore deserved equal pay. In 1869, National Labor Union Congress, the Men's Typographical Union, accused her of strike-breaking and running a non-union shop at the Revolution and called her an enemy of labor. In the 1890s, while president of the National American Women's Suffrage Association, Anthony emphasized the importance of gaining support of organized labor. She encouraged Florence Kelley and Jane Addams in their work in Chicago, and Gail Laughlin in her goal to seek protection for working women through trade unions.
Through her other work in the abolitionist and temperance movements, Anthony became convinced to fight for what eventually would become her most famous achievement, women's suffrage. She was convinced that in order to affect the political atmosphere, women needed to have the right to vote. Teaming up with fellow feminist activist Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Anthony founded the American Equal Rights Association and began publishing a newspaper they called The Revolution, with its masthead reading, "Men their rights and nothing more, women their rights and nothing less, and the aim of establishing justice for all." This was in an effort to get Congress to sign a constitutional amendment granting women the right to vote. However, the suffrage movement split, with many deciding to focus on achieving this goal in a state-by-state fight. Still, with the goal of a constitutional amendment in mind, Anthony began a national speaking tour, eventually getting arrested for her views. This temporary setback did not discourage her, however, as after she received her freedom, she collected over 10,000 signatures that she sent to Congress. This, however, was laughed off by Congress and did not amount to much. Despite this, Anthony would address every Congress from 1869 to 1906. Eventually, the two organizations who agreed on strategy, or disagreed on strategy, would reunite, and women's suffrage would be achieved in 1920 through the 19th Amendment, 14 years after Anthony's death.
Susan B. Anthony was uniquely called to be a women's rights activist. The circumstances she grew up with promoted a need for change. She was able to change the oppression that women faced. It did not all happen at once, but she was willing to follow her vocation in a salute to future women. She helped to pass the amendment to allow women to vote, and she was even sent to jail for speaking about voting. And because she was willing to undertake such a challenge, even with the consequences she would face, the world is better for her. She never got to see the results of her actions, and even stated, "To think I have had more than 60 years of hard struggle for a little liberty, and then to die without it seems so cruel." Would you be willing to sacrifice your own time to get a little freedom in return? Do you think her sacrifice was worth it?